All right. Okay, good evening again. Welcome to folks who are just joining us, and I apologize for being muted on Zoom. So welcome, whether you're online or in person, to our session around our gifted and talented audit response. So as part of the Division of Academic Performance, this is one of the many items we're working on as we work to continuously improve the student experience here in Wauwatosa. Tonight, we have our student growth coordinators here, Amy Ducott, who is our elementary student growth coordinator, and Brooke DeLassis, our secondary student growth coordinator, who will be co-presenting and leading us through a few activities so that we can get your feedback around our gifted and talented programming here in Wauwatosa. We want to make sure our work is aligned to our strategic plan. Specifically, this work is aligned to strategic objective 1.3. So looking at our student programming and data and making sure that we're getting the results that we would like. So we continuously will look at data, we will make plans, we study those, and we make adjustments as necessary. Our work is also aligned to our mission, which is here on the screen. Really, our mission, vision, and core beliefs guide all of our work. So, and that will actually be an integral part of some of the activities we have planned tonight. So here's our mission. Our vision: to ensure the exceptional student experience, to eradicate inequity, eliminate disproportionality, and exceed proficiency for all students. So again, keeping those things at the forefront. And when we refer to them later on tonight, you'll have them to reference in front of you as well. And then finally, our core beliefs. We also need to make sure that the work we do helps us to live out these core values and beliefs as well. So when we get to activities that align to this work and aligning some of our audit response around this, we'll make sure that you have that in front of you as well. Tonight, we have a few learning targets that we were going to make sure that we hit relative to our presentation and involve you in. So understanding the need for us as a district to shift to a new lens with which to approach advanced programming and talent development. So that's our first target. And that you'll be able to understand the magnitude and interconnectedness of the shared work to be done to fully enact all of the audit recommendations, of which there are 8. And that you can make connections between the learning that's done tonight and our mission, vision, and core values here in the Wauwatosa School District. And we'll know that that's happened because we'll be able to collect and get your feedback and know that you've been able to ask some questions and deepen your understanding as well. So if you are currently seated at a table by yourself, you may want to move when we get to the more interactive portion because we've designed some turn and talk activities. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to move right now. But and for our folks who are online, we will provide a Google form so that you can participate in the activities as well. And just to further set the stage, this is the timeline of sort of things that kicked off with our audit back in July and August when we met with Jackie Drummer, who was the consultant we hired to do the audit. So we met with her in July. That was the first time really that Brooke, Amy, and I got to engage with her and learn about the audit and the response and started to think about the response. We shared that with the community and the school board in September. And then this fall started to do a deep dive into research and best practice around gifted and talented programming. We have spent a large part of the winter connecting with various stakeholder groups within our district, and finally tonight being able to connect with our community to get feedback on our philosophy around talent development and also some of the programming that we know we need to bring to the district. So with that, I will turn it over to Amy to talk about the current state of things.
Welcome and thanks for carving some time. Yeah, sure, out of your night to be here with us. So thank you for that. We're going to start right off with an activity. So the purpose of this first activity that we're going to do tonight is to really start to build some consensus of what needs to be shifted in our district and why. So the first activity, we have some handouts. So we will get those passed out to you. So I'll give the directions while they're passing it out. The first thing that you're going to see in your handout, there's two, you're going to use the first 2 pages for this. You're going to see our current approach to gifted and talented. So you're going to see a section about identification, how we currently identify students, how we program for students, and how we monitor for students. That's the first slide right at the top. The next 3 slides, which goes on to the second page, that's going to tell you our current state. So as a result of our current approach, what is our current state? So we're going to take maybe just about 5 minutes here for you to take some time at your table to review that. You can talk with people at your table if you want. You can jot notes, but just take a few minutes. The entirety of the activity is going to look like this. We're going to do this piece. We're going to give you a little more information, one more bit of information, and then we're going to start drafting some problem statements, thinking about what needs to be fixed or shifted in our district. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Clarifying question.
Yes, the 99%, 99 percentile for that grade for the district.
On the universal screener star.
So is that nationwide?
Yes, it's nationally normed. For your child's grade. Yes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Are these slides online somewhere?
Not at the moment, but they can be. Yeah.
We use it for the recording.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. If you're joining us online, we're going to project the slides that our members who are here have in their hands. So just give us 1 second to get that up for you. One of the questions that we have from one of our online members is, what is an ALP? An ALP stands for Advanced Learning Plan, which is a plan that was designed to set goals for students who were identified. All right, we're going to move to the next task. So that was the first task. Keep that information in your head. We're going to move on to the next piece. We want to think about the student experience in our current system. So what does it feel like to be a student who's identified in our current system? One of the pieces of the audit was that we surveyed different stakeholder groups. One of the groups that we surveyed was our students in grades 6 through 12. 319 students responded to the student survey and 148 left a comment. So Brooke and I are going to read some of the comments to you. We picked a sampling of comments that represented the overall gist of what they were saying. At the same time, we'd like you to think about the fact that these same students answered a question on that survey. I feel I am provided with rigorous learning experiences in the Wauwatosa School District on a 1 to 5, 1 being disagree, 5 being agree. 56% of our kids who responded to this survey chose a 1 through 3. So keep that in mind while we're reading the comments. Here's what the question is. This might help. If you are aware of a formal identification as gifted and talented, how has that label impacted your experience academically, socially, or emotionally?
You mean for this question though? This was for the pocket of students who were
We're being asked.
for this question, the one that's projected. That question is students who are previously identified as gifted and talented. Yep. No, that's
Oh, I
okay.
might not have. Thank you. Yep, 6 through 12.
All right. And the question that we're reading responses to right now is this one.
Yes, if you're aware of a formal identification, how has that label impacted your experience academically, socially, or emotionally? So here's a sampling. I feel pressured by this title, but it has also pushed me to work hard and I have excelled.
It gives me confidence and makes me want to strive for success.
Academically, it was fine. Emotionally, it helped to inflate my ego dramatically, making the newfound challenge of calculus extremely frustrating as it brought the following perception. I was the uber smart math kid, and now I have no idea what's going on, so therefore I must be stupid. This perception also discouraged me from asking for academic help when I needed it, as I saw it as me conceding that I am not smart enough to figure out the given task on my own, a flaw I am still working to overcome to this day. Combined with a general loss of interest in school at the time, my confidence and general mental health plummeted. Socially, I felt like I was in limbo between years, not really engaging with my year or the year ahead. I got grouped with due to the small amount of time I was around either. The fact that my schedule had to be specially adjusted to accommodate this further reinforced this feeling of otherness for similar reasons.
It has opened up a lot more opportunities for me academically because I have been able to enroll in higher level classes that are more challenging and fulfilling. However, it forced me to advocate for myself to get into those higher level classes. And while I think that benefited me in the long run, it became a bit exhausting, having to constantly ask to be challenged.
I did incredibly well in my classes because of it. It also felt really good to be special in something because a lot of academically high-functioning children, myself included, found it hard to get social validation due to not quite fitting in. On the other hand, this created a sort of emotional dependence on academic validation, and I felt as if I wasn't allowed to get below an A. If I didn't do perfectly in school all the time, I wasn't really gifted. I can't express how many times I've been called stuck up or a try-hard for answering a question. Even as we matured and people stopped actively making me feel bad about my label, I was still left with a feeling of guilt because it just doesn't feel fair that I got these opportunities and that I got this label when not everyone else did.
I haven't been affected much. There aren't special opportunities or much information provided to the students who are identified.
While I feel that the label of being gifted and talented has helped me and others acquire more challenging assignments in our academic experience, it has not helped us grow as much as I hoped.
There has been a deal of pressure to conform to the socially placed hierarchy of labels, and where I have appreciated and valued this program greatly, I always felt as if I was excluding or diminishing others.
So much pressure to be the best every single day. I'm tired of being the best.
This label has not affected me in the slightest. I am still the same person and I still work hard. This title is just a bonus because of that, and I will continue to work hard and be the kind person that I aspire to be.
While I am proud of my status, it sometimes feels isolating. Additionally, it often felt like the label of gifted and talented took a lot of work to receive, but had few benefits.
Being labeled as gifted or talented or anything similarly can be an amazing label on a kid and a horrible label. While it may increase self-efficacy or allow more challenges for kids that can handle them, it also may create a connection between personal value and success in academics. Labeling kids early with these terms can seriously mess them up as they make that connection. Allowing kids to simply love learning should be the priority, as well as making them feel comfortable enough to ask for a challenge. I understand this label is here to ensure children are pushed to the best of their ability, but I think we can do that without qualifying gifted in terms of advanced classes, grades, etc. I think to ensure kids become their best selves, we should focus less on labels and more on allowing kids and teachers the room to have the energy to challenge ourselves and grow. I do not want to be called a gifted student because that term feels like a pressure that I do not need in my learning experience. And I do not want teachers to view me as such. I want them to see me simply as someone who can be pushed and grown in my own way. I am tired of being gifted and talented.
All right, so here's the third piece of this activity. So we want to think for a minute again about the student perspective and the student needs in our current process. So if you look at the top row, this is one student. They're in third grade. You see the shaded part, okay? So they're in third grade, but their needs are in fifth grade. So the star represents their student needs. So that in third grade, that student is labeled as gifted and talented. By fifth grade, there still may be a mismatch between what's being provided and what's needed. So they're now in 5th grade, but their needs are really showing up in 6th grade. If we jump ahead to 6th grade, it could appear that their needs are being met in 6th grade, but maybe they're not engaged. Maybe they're not quite with us. Are we checking in on this? Who's checking to see if this label that a child was given back in 3rd grade is still meeting their needs in 6th grade? Jump ahead to 8th grade. Now this student has needs that have really pushed ahead. So the question to think about on this slide and the final piece of information before you write your problem statement is to really think about how students' needs are fluid. And do we have a system, a current system that meets those fluid needs? How does the label of gifted currently serve our students as they move through? So we're going to have you, if you'd like to join a table, you may. If you'd like to do it on your own and stay put, that's fine too. But take some time to think, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So remember, the purpose of this activity was to start to build consensus about what needs to shift and why. We're going to give you about 5 minutes to talk at your table and draft that. And then we'd like to share them out if you're willing. Yes.
How is the term gifted,
Can you say a little more?
like how those kids, like a lot of the kids were saying,
Mhm.
how do they know if they?
I think it varies. We've heard from some families who have gone so far as to say, like, I've never told my child. So I think,
So it's not like they're being in school, and their teachers.
No. All the gifted children go to, no.
Okay, it just seems like they're, like some kids might have internalized it.
Mhm.
I was just curious how it's.
Right. Thanks. Any other questions before we start the problem statements? Okay, we're gonna take about 5 minutes to do this. Okay, is there anybody who wants to share out their problem statement? Anybody willing?
We don't have a program.
I'm gonna give you the mic because the people online can only hear what's spoken into the mic. Do you mind? We don't have a program.
We saw the problem statement as being able to meet kids' educational needs, no matter what level, or star percentage that they're at.
So we need to challenge kids at their level early, from what I'm hearing from those high school kids, so that they have a normal amount of challenge and failure early, so that when they do fail, it's normal, just like it is for every other kid. And we need to give them social outlets with kids like them. So again, they don't feel isolated and alone. And sure, that goes for kids at all levels, but it, in this case, it goes for kids at this level as well.
Sure.
We need a comprehensive, flexible advanced learner plan that's easy to implement within the teaching framework that we already have at all the school levels, because there currently isn't one, a functional one.
Okay. So we've done the same activity with several groups, as Jenny mentioned previously. We've brought this to Curriculum Council. We've brought it to our Division of Academic Performance, our future MLSS coordinators, our ACP. We've had our administrators exposed to it. Just today, we were able to share it with the academic specialists who are part of our department. So we wanted you to just take a minute or have an opportunity to read some of the other problem statements that were written for this exact same activity. So go ahead and just take a minute to read those. There's 2 slides. Second slide.
Okay, this is the good part. This is where we're going to leave the part that I know and sense is upsetting and hard, which is that we don't have what we need at the moment. Fully acknowledge that. And so glad that you're here. So we are really excited about having a future direction and so glad that you're here so we can start to talk about that because we hear you. We don't want you to think that we don't know. And I think hopefully it showed up in what we just talked about that yes, there's a problem. So the audit stated that as well. These are the 8 different recommendations coming out of the audit. So the first was review all policies, guidelines, rubrics, documents, and website for accuracy. 2, consider additional different screening tools to promote equity and in identification. 3, consider using local campus norms in your screening process. 4, revisit service delivery options based on best practice and current research. 5, review the offerings at each school in Wauwatosa to see what enrichment opportunities are available. 6, create a professional development plan for all educators. 7, provide more social and emotional systems for students and their families. And 8, craft a communication plan. So that's a lot, and none of it is really linear. So when Amy and I started to digest this in the fall, there was a lot to digest, we needed a place to start. So the starting place was number 4, which is revisit service delivery options based on best practice and current research. Because the system we have right now is working how it's intended. It's designed to identify. We're doing a great, well, they're not even doing a great job of identifying. Let's be honest about that too. But we're identifying, right? And then what's happening next? So that's where we need to start. We need to reground in what we're really after. So I want us to look back at this slide again. We need to really be looking, if we know that the needs of learners are fluid and dynamic and could change over time, then we need to be designing a system that is responsive. I believe you used the word flexible earlier, and can respond to our students' needs at that moment because they change over time. Additionally, we also know about students that they have what we call like a jagged learner profile. So if this is one student in my classroom, this could be your kid, maybe they are in 3rd grade and they're doing a little better at ELA. They're doing really well at math. They're on par for 3rd grade in terms of leadership. And then they're social emotional. They need a little more support and guidance. So each kid in the class has a profile that looks different, right? And what we need to be able to do is say, how are we meeting the needs of this kid? So if I'm a teacher, I need to have things to draw upon to be able to respond to all of these 25 kids who have this different profile in my class at that moment in time. So that's a big task, and we don't have what we need so that teachers can pull on those levers and do that. We currently have a more responsive system, which is called response to intervention, on the support side of the continuum. So students who are not currently at grade level are discussed. We had a question online about tiers and how students are identified for tiers. That's more than we can really get into today. I'm going to stay at the conceptual level. But really, if we want to think about tier 1 as grade level instruction, and then in need of remediation and support, and then intensive remediation, what we need to do is flip this triangle on its side and have it also go the other way, so that we're having just as many conversations in an ongoing fashion, not just a once label, to say, well, if the student is working above grade level, we have systems in place and conversations in place that are systematic to discuss the needs of those students and to be able to respond. So we need to move from this triangle. I'm calling it a diamond. Someone gave me a different math word and I'm going to claim English teacher. Rhombus? Is that what it was? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what we need to do then is make this shift. We need to move from starting with identification and then hoping we have some programming to meet a need. And then, as we said, we're not really monitoring the growth there, right? We need to shift to prioritizing building out programming at the class, school, and district level for the different identification areas, and then be able to say how we're identifying students for that in a much more fluid and dynamic manner. And then subsequently, we'll have to build systems to monitor not only student growth, right? Because everyone wants to see, if I would go back here, everyone wants to see that we're going this way down that line towards growth, everybody, right? So we have to figure out ways to monitor that for our students and also monitor the effectiveness of our programming. If we did this, well, the question is, what would we need to do? What would we need to have in place? Which is what I hear people asking for. Services to say, oh, how do you support my child who might feel like they've got this, they're really excelling in math, but they're struggling maybe because of it, right? How do we have that, those services and those things to draw upon to really approach and nurture each learner in the way that they need? So in order to do this, we have got to move from this idea of labeling kids to talent development. This is a national shift in GT, and it's going to be a shift in language too. So we're going to have to start moving away from gifted and talented as what we're talking about. Oh, it's the GT audit, right? So that's a shift for us. It'll be a big shift for the community. The idea of talent development, and I will acknowledge that it also sounds a little bit like a talent show, but we also want to recognize that all students do have gifts and talents, and some have ones that are exceeding peers that need some attention and further development as well. So the other and last idea before we kind of transition into some activities are this idea. Who are we building for? And it's not just the future workforce. We don't want to just make employees, right? But we want to start to look at our students and say, we know that the world is different. We know that we can't predict what they're going out into. And so we need to be able to have students have that self-agency and efficacy to advocate for themselves as they leave us so that they feel confident in themselves to enter those unknown workforce places and just in their whole life too. We want them to feel like a whole person. So back to those student statements, we need to be able to comprehensively meet their needs.
So just a little more on talent development, if you were curious about it. One of the things that Brooke and I have worked hard to do this year is to create a relationship with the DPI. So the consultant that we have is Mark Schwingle, and he has graciously spent some time with Brooke and I. We've talked through a lot of the audit with him and the work that we're doing, and it's been really, I guess, a good feeling to know that the DPI is supporting the work that we're doing, the direction that we're headed, knowing they're headed in the same way. So the top, I guess the top one is the one I think that is the one I'm going to read out loud. It says participating students are able to explore topics in many domains and to discover strengths that might otherwise have gone unaddressed. This is the heart of talent development. Less emphasis on identification as a prerequisite for access to programming. Shifting focus instead to offering opportunities for students to discover strengths in themselves, which can then be cultivated. This was one of the slides from our group meeting last week. And one of the things that he talked about is that not only do we need to allow children to follow their interests, it is our responsibility to open their ears and their eyes to things they might not even know that they're interested in. So part of that talent development is offering those opportunities. In particular, one of the districts that they have recommended us to connect with is MPS. And some of the work that they're doing is really putting those offerings out for students, K-6, right around there. And then thinking about how students then take that ownership, like 7, 12. So you're starting K-6 and you're offering them all these things, right? To see what their interests are, to help them see those things. And then helping them to guide their pathways from then on. So when we think about envisioning the ideal state of where we'd like to go, we have some initial thoughts. As we said, we need to shift to a programming first model. Along those lines, we need to develop a talent, or we need to establish a clear talent development philosophy, which you're going to have an opportunity to look at tonight, a draft of it. We need to think about what programming is valued by our community. So thank you for being here and starting that for us. We know we can't develop all talents, and so we have to really think about what we value, right? One of the ways we can start to work on that as well in the district is to start being involved in curriculum review cycles so that we can be always thinking about what, yeah. Just to clarify. Yes. Yes, but there is a parent involvement piece.
Yeah.
So anybody who is interested in getting involved in those, we welcome that. That comes in a little bit later in the cycle. But always thinking about enrichment opportunities within our resources. And then the last piece of that is to build out programming options, as Brooke mentioned before, at the classroom level, the school level, and the district level.
From there, these are just some details and ideas around identification. And I kind of mentioned some of them before, but just creating an ongoing system of identification for those programming options, because it's not that they would be without any sort of, some might be for all, some might be just for people who have met certain criteria to come into it. There's different levels even in what we're proposing that if you're really far accelerated, that's still going to have criteria attached. But offering enrichment options as well. And then considering alternate tools that are more inclusive. I think we saw that disproportionality in the data. And so there's definitely ways that we need to improve in expanding our reach and making sure that we are not letting students go unidentified. We need to involve teachers in the identification process and provide professional development to them. And then finally establish a structure within our multi-level systems of support. That was that triangle I showed you, so that we're having those ongoing conversations around student need. And finally, we need some systems to monitor growth both of students, and one way could be through a learner profile system. And the other would be that we need to develop ways to monitor effectiveness of our programming and see if it's actually having an impact on students, and have that based in those national gifted programming standards. Okay, that was a lot to digest. We're going to move into an opportunity for feedback. Do you guys need a 2-minute brain break? Or are people okay? Everyone's okay? Everyone? All right. Hope you guys are good online. Anything in the chat? Okay. I can do that. Great. Jenny, you got it? All right. So the opportunities tonight are twofold, and they're all under that programming section where we would really love your feedback. Those 3 bullets that we showed you just a minute ago, that establish a clear talent development philosophy, and then talk about programming options. We're going to do 2 different feedback protocols today to gain your perspective and expertise. We know that people bring a lot of different information and knowledge and expertise with you, and we're hoping that you will share that with us. So we're going to start with the talent development philosophy.
Okay, you will get a copy of this. Don't feel like you have to read right now. So yeah, hold on one second. So the purpose of a philosophy is to identify the important ways in which programming will be linked with our overall mission, vision, and values. And it's going to help to align our work as we move forward. We had a first draft that we had created and shared with some of the other stakeholder groups that we mentioned before. This is our second draft. It was shared today with the academic specialists, so we received some feedback on it today. And we're really excited that you're going to have an opportunity to give us feedback on it as well. It is still in draft form, and we're going to use a protocol. Oh, thank you. To do that. So this is called a warm and cool feedback protocol. If you look on the slide, it's also in your packet. You'll see number one, we're doing right now, introducing the protocol. Number two, I'm going to give a short presentation. Number three, you'll have an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions. Then you'll have 5 minutes to examine the work independently. And 5 more minutes to talk in your small group and provide warm and cool feedback. Warm feedback would be supportive, and cool feedback would be challenging. Could also think of it as a plus delta. Any type of feedback like that. The last piece is that you'll post your feedback on over by the fridge, our warm feedback, cool feedback. So as you're talking in those small groups, if you want to jot down or independently jot down, we'll ask you to leave that up there so that we can read through that. All right, so we're going to move on to the second piece, the presentation. So we developed this philosophy to reflect the research behind talent development and also to reflect the direction of the state. As we stated earlier, it's still in draft form. As you go through the feedback protocol, we're going to ask you to refer to the guiding questions that are on the slide. They're also in your packet. If you're online, we have a Google form that we can add to the chat where you will also be able to access this and provide your feedback. So next section of the protocol is to ask clarifying questions. Does anybody in person here or online have any clarifying questions about the work that we're going to do? Can we save that question till we finish the protocol? Can we keep it focused on the protocol? Are there any online questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to take 5 minutes for you to examine the philosophy. It's being passed out. With those guiding questions, the first guiding question is this philosophy aligned with our district mission, vision, and core values? Those are in your packet, so you can reference them. The second question is, will this philosophy be clear to families? We want to make sure the language we're using is clear. We want to make sure the intent is clear. So take about 5 minutes to work independently. There's Post-it notes for you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next step of the protocol, which some of you have moved into already, and that's fine. So we're going to take 5 more minutes now in your group. Feel free to stay in your group. You could move around if you want to give the warm and cool feedback. So it generally begins with like a few minutes of warm, then a few minutes of cool, might flip-flap back and forth. You're doing this at your table. And the last step then would be to post your feedback so that we can have it on the chart over by the fridge. So we'll start 5 minutes of that. All right, if you can start to wrap up your conversations and post your warm and cool feedback, we'll give you a minute to just get up and stick those on there. That's going to be helpful to us. The other option, if you don't feel like getting up, is just put a W or a C on your Post-it, stick it on your philosophy, and we can collect those. We can be flexible.
And if
Either one
you're-
is fine.
If you're online, you can also use the Google form that was linked in the chat at the beginning to provide the same feedback.
You're not my bro. I'm not.
So we'll take about 2 minutes to wrap this up because we want to get to the last part.
Okay, we are going to move on to the last step of some feedback opportunity around programming. Today, in kind of thinking forward and brainstorming, which we're going to engage in a minute, we kind of want to live here in this desirability circle. So we know that later we'll have to talk about what's actually viable and feasible in terms of what we can deliver on and in what time. But today we kind of want to dream big. So we want to get your feedback around what types of experiences would help to develop known and unknown talents in our students in Wauwatosa. We are going to run a protocol around this as well, and it's going to involve getting up. Get excited. So you're going to need, I'll walk through the whole thing and then we'll go through it. So I previewed the question, we'll go back to it in a minute, but you are going to take your notepad and a pen and you're going to stand up and find a partner and you're going to have 2 minutes to brainstorm around that question. It could be around any of those different areas, wherever your mind is at the moment, and jot them down. It could be something you know that would be great for in the classroom, something you think your student, you've seen your own student benefit from, some program that you're aware of. So there's not any right or wrong here. We're in the midst of divergent thinking. So we're not going to come back to the convergent thinking and narrow our choices just yet. We're just trying to get a big pool of ideas. And it's really helpful to have your perspective because you know what would resonate with your students and what would be or have been beneficial. So I know I just took a little bird walk on this protocol, but that will be the discussion. And then after those 2 minutes, we'll rotate. You'll find a new partner and talk again. We'll do as many additional rounds as we think we can reasonably get in. And then you'll have some time to clean up your ideas. And there's a spot over here to post under those different areas. We know it's not as linear as this. We know that something that pertains to creativity might also pertain to math, might also pertain to leadership. So if it doesn't go in just one bucket, that's okay too. But we just want to get people to start to think about what experiences are worthwhile and would be exciting for our students. Any questions before we start that?
Subjects allowed. For discussion.
That's a great question. For those online, the question was any other subjects open for discussion? So I would say technically the state statute, we went back and forth around this, so this is a great question, says academic areas. And so we know that right now we're currently identifying around reading and math. And I think in the future, we could look to broaden those offerings, but we're starting there with the idea too, that reading shows up in different areas, math shows up in different areas. So you might have application that occurs in different areas, but I would say, yes, I mean, add anything in there because creativity is a lot of different things, right? And so is leadership. So I would say, go for it. Maybe just label it at the top about what area. Is there something in particular you're thinking of?
I have science kids.
Yeah.
And I have a
Yep.
foreign language.
Definitely. Okay, so online, she said science and foreign language. Yeah, write it down. Yep. Any other questions before we start? I think that's why we need you guys here for those perspectives. Yes. Do you want to answer that one? Can we do it right at the end? Okay. Yep. Well, yes.
Yeah, we'll get to it at the end.
Okay. All right. So pad of Post-its, pens. Everyone stand up. Find a partner. Thanks for being open to meeting new people tonight. Okay. All right, so what types of experiences would help to develop known and unknown talents in our students in Wauwatosa? I'm starting my 2-minute timer.
Got it?
Yep, here we go. For those of you online, there is a spot on the form to add your ideas as well.
All right. Yeah, we have just a few minutes left in our session. I want to be respectful of the time commitment everyone made this evening. And just have a few more things to share. The first is the proposed timeline. Again, this is a draft form. We're going to clean this up for our board presentation on March 13th. What we're going to be doing or aim to do over the course of this year and into the next 2 school years specifically to be aligned with our strategic plan. Please know that there is no necessarily official start and end point. This is a continuous cycle of improvement in terms of the programming for talent development. But we know we need to be very, very diligent and careful in how we add programming and develop our staff to deliver programming for talent development. So I'm just going to I'll leave this slide up for just a few more seconds and then shift to the timeline for the next couple of years. Again, proposed, we're going to firm that up and share that more formally at our board presentation. But just wanted to give you an idea of where we're headed. We're living in an old system right now that we're trying to move forward. So it does get a little bit messy, but Yep. March 13th is the board meeting, and we will have the video presentation posted in advance of the meeting. So you would have access to the presentation ahead of the evening meeting on March 13th. And board meetings now start at 6 o'clock. So our proposed timeline for the next couple of years is here. We'll flesh that out further, and there'll be changes along the way because we will learn more as we go. While folks are reading, I know there was a question in the chat around special education in terms of developing talents. All means all. Students with or without disabilities are included in this work. I just want to make that very, very clear. It is entirely possible for a student to receive services through special education and also need acceleration. So please, I don't want there to be any confusion about that. All means all in the land of talent development. And if there are further questions about that, we're certainly happy to take questions via email or for our friends online if you would want to put that in the Google form that we linked, that's available as well. I'd like to bring us back just to the learning targets we shared at the beginning of our session tonight. We've talked about the need to shift to a new lens with which to approach talent development. I hope that you got a little bit more of an understanding of the magnitude and the shift that needs to occur in our system, K-12, and that you've had a chance to make connections between where we're going as it should align to our mission, vision, and core values. And then we've appreciated the feedback you have given, and we look forward to digging into the warm and cool feedback and your ideas around programming. It's essential that we engage all of our stakeholders. We're going to plan to engage some students throughout the course of the rest of this year as well. But we know that we need everyone on board to make this work. This will be posted as well. This is really the crux of the research base that we used. This came out of our audit. And that's really guided our work. So this will be posted online and you'll have access to that, but we can start also, if you want us to continue to include you in conversation and you filled out the sign up sheet for tonight, we can also send that in an email to you as well. The book Beyond Gifted has really been helpful. It's been an anchor text for us. And we have one final ask in the few minutes that we have left. at your table. And you could do this individually or with the folks at your table, and online. You have this in your Google form as well. If someone asked you what the Wauwatosa School District is doing about talent development, so formerly known as gifted and talented, we're switching to talent development, what would your response be? So that is your exit ticket for tonight. And there are actually two, depending on which door you'd like to exit from. Take your Post-it, write down your elevator pitch for your exit ticket and put it on the large Post-it paper or online in the Google form. So after having been able to listen to the discussion tonight and learn a little bit more, if someone were to ask you, did you go to the session last night for the Division of Academic Performance? What would you, so that might be another way of thinking about the question. What would you let them know about the state of talent development and what we're doing here in Wauwatosa? Oh, yeah. We are also here too for those folks in person. If you have a question that's lingering that you want to ask us, we're happy to stick around for a few moments. Oh, yep. You can also make an appointment to meet with any of us.
It would be nice.
Do you mind if I can do this so that just everyone online here too?
I have some general feedback that it would be really helpful. And I know we're looking at a bigger picture, but the right now, if we could start filling in the right now gap, if my son's teacher could do his 15-minute math lesson, which is what he's doing, and if the talent development team could then provide his teacher with the challenge that he needs, that's still within the curriculum, that would really be helpful. Because right now I feel like we're doing a lot of asking of our teachers to provide all the needs of all their students. And it would be really amazing to have that. I know last year my son was very fortunate. He had a teacher that rewrote her entire math curriculum for him. You can't ask that. So if that, that's something I'd like to see happen.
Our next step is programming. Also identified as that is a place to start.
Yeah, if I could just add to that briefly, packets are a good stopgap, and that's something that the reading specialists and the math specialists at the school should theoretically be able to help put together, because I've asked that same teacher for packets for my daughter. And it seems relatively easy, and it would be a really helpful stopgap. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. And 2 years with a nothing is going to be rough. Thanks.
Anyone else need the mic?
Sorry, I'll wrap things up. I've been kind of lurking in the background. My name is Nicole Marble. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the school district. And I just want to thank Ms. Foch, Ms. Delassis, and Ms. Dukach for all of their hard work. They have put a lot of time, a lot of thought. They've done a lot of research, and really just want to thank you for being here tonight and for providing the input. And we will be taking all of this to make next moves. And for those of you that shared the concerns about the immediate, absolutely, we will start digging into how we can better support those stopgaps as you have said. So we absolutely want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can in the immediate with the resources, time, and capacity of everyone, and knowing that we want to do better. So thank you for being here, giving up your time away from your family to participate. So those of you online, thank you for being here as well. So please stay warm and safe in the upcoming snow. And we hope to see you again in future engagement sessions.
Thank you.